Hey y'all, my name is Rachel Bross and I am making my very first ever YouTube video. First topic that we will be talking about is a did you know topic. And I did not know this until I've recently researched it, but landmines used to be, they were first used back in the Roman era, where basically they would dig a hole, put a bunch of spikes in there, cover it up good enough you couldn't see it, and then you would step on it, and basically all those little spikes would impale your feet, your ankles, completely immobilize you. I mean, unless you want to crawl on your hands and knees. I doubt you want to do that in a war, though. And eventually they graduated to having the combustion system, which came from us getting gunpowder and everything from China. So they would fill these little canisters and they would have a trip sensory on them to where you stand on them, boom, you explode. Or at least it explodes and you either get hit with shrapnel or whatever body part landed on it is no more. And now they're extremely advanced to the point where you have absolutely no idea they're there, and they're still there to this day in many places from past wars. And people are finding out that they're there by stepping on them, and it's a very, very tragic thing. So topic 2 is going to be a writing topic where I share my do's and don'ts with Mary Sue and John Doe's. And yes, I could not pick another name for the man, sorry. Basically, your Mary Sue, as a lot of you have probably researched and read, is a plain Jane girl who has all these wonderful traits and not a single flaw, other than maybe she's clumsy or she's unaware of the fact that she's pretty much everybody's idea of beautiful, to the point that she's like, oh, I'm not beautiful, why is this person falling in love with me or whatever. And you don't want a flat two-dimensional, in that case, to me, that would be a one-dimensional character because there's absolutely no growth. You don't want a character like that. You want, if you're going for the strong female character, you want one that's real, one that has struggles, one that can cry, yes, because not all women are devoid of emotion and not all women are over-emotional. A lot of women can deal with their stuff without having to block it inside because, you know, crying can be cathartic. Anyway, basically you want her to not just be physically strong and not just emotionally strong, but a good balance between the two. Yeah, she can pick up a sword and cut somebody's head off, no problem, but she go home and maybe the guilt of war weigh on her a little bit. Like, I mean, basically like soldiers today, they'll come home and they bring the horrors of war home with them. And some deal with that through therapy, some deal with that through the drink, some deal with that by bottling it up inside and just not talking about it. But a lot of them do feel guilty for what they had to do because not every part of war is black and white. So the female character could also never have picked up a sword in her life, but have the emotional capacity to deal with a love life that's not great. Maybe her man's cheating on her. Maybe her man has died and she doesn't know how to move on, but she's coming to terms with that. And that could be through fantasy fiction, it could be through literary fiction, it could be any kind of female character. And then you got the exact same character in a man, where he is all big buff and no brains, or he is a lot of logic and muscle, but he doesn't want to take any advice from anybody, and he has no physical flaws, or he's your superhero that has absolutely no physical flaws and no emotional flaws, to the point where he is just all around good guy and he doesn't struggle with anything. No, you want a strong male character, they're going to struggle with things just like the strong female character would. See, your male characters can have situational conflicts where doing the right thing could cause harm, but it could cause less harm than not doing the right thing, which would cause a lot of it. It's almost the same question as the worth of the few versus the worth of the many kind of deal. And he could be kind of like the character from Atlantis. I know a lot of people out there love Atlantis. I love Atlantis. The cartoon, yeah. He could be scrawny, kind of nerdy, but at the same time, when pushed to it, able to get the job done. And there's nothing wrong with having a nerdy character be hot. There's nothing wrong with having a strong character be ugly, because, you know, one's trash is another person's treasure. I mean, the guy could easily have the best personality in the world, but not quite the best face. But if you only focus on the personality, you're not going to notice the physical flaws. You're going to fall in love with them anyway. That's neither here nor there. I'm getting a little off on a tangent. But, so to write those characters well, think of all the flaws you can, think of all the good traits you can, put them in a bowl, kind of blend them up, and see what you get. You need to give them real life struggles. You need to give them real life personal growth. Because if you stick with the no flaws, all goody goody, you're not going to have the character development that you want. And you're certainly not going to have the audience falling in love with your characters. The whole time you're going to have your audience pretty much scrutinizing your characters. They need to be real. So we're going to move on to topic number 3, which is something that I have recently started doing. I've only got 3 books from them, but it is Book of the Month Club, which is an online thing where you pay $10 a month for a book, which is actually a pretty darn good deal because I got a $30 book for $10, even though I wasn't that satisfied by it, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, we're gonna get to it. So yeah, and then you can get little promotions where if you refer a friend, you get a $5 credit, or you get a free book credit. Yeah, so you can get 2 books for $10, which I did 1 month, and they were both awesome. So they're on the shelf actually behind me. The first one that we're going to talk about, whoops, is called Hour of the Assassin. I was not very satisfied by this. The blurb is what hooked me, and usually that's what hooks me anyway. So here is the blurb. A Secret Service agent, Nick Avros, spent a decade protecting the most powerful men and women in America and developed a unique gift, the ability to think like an assassin. Now he uses that skill in a little known but crucial job. As a red teamer, he poses as a threat, testing the security around highest officials to find vulnerabilities before the enemies can. He is a mock killer, capable of slipping past even the best defenses. His latest assignment is to assess the security surrounding the former CIA director at his DC area home. But soon after he breaches the man's study, the home's inner sanctum, Nick finds himself entangled in a vicious crime that will shake Washington to its foundations, as all the evidence points to him. Nick knows he's the perfect scapegoat, of course, but who is framing him and why? To clear his name, he must find the truth, a search that leads to a dark conspiracy whose roots stretch back decades. The prize is the most powerful position in the world, the Oval Office. To save himself and the people he loves, Nick must stop the men who rule Washington before they bury him along with their secrets. Now, who wouldn't be hooked by a blurb like that? I certainly was. However, to me, now, y'all go out and buy it yourselves and read it and make your own judgments, but to me, the book could have been a little better. It felt as though it was in its third revision and could have been slightly stronger in its impact. The plot is great. The characters are good. It's certainly not a John Doe, but pacing and structurally, it could have been done a little better. Which takes me on to my second book of the month book, which someone at the time is borrowing. I kept the sleeve though. The Guest List. This is a must read. Here's the blurb. On a remote island off the coast of Ireland, guests gather to celebrate the wedding of Jules Keegan and Will Slater. Will is a rising television star, handsome and charming. Jules is a smart, ambitious magazine publisher. Though the sea is a little choppy and the cell service a little spotty, their wedding is everything you could expect of a young power couple. Designer dress, 4-tiered cake, boutique whiskey, and vintage champagne. Every detail has been curated to perfection. All that's left is to orchestrate the happiness. But perfection is for plans, and people are all too human. It's not long after the cake is cut and the champagne popped that resentments and petty jealousies come out. Worse yet, the latest barometer reading shows the weather has shifted from fair to challengeable, and dark clouds are looming overhead. Everyone on the island has a secret, everyone has a motive, and someone won't leave the wedding alive. I definitely suggest you buy this book. It is very good. Keeps you on your toes, keeps you guessing throughout the whole thing who's gonna die, because I thought it was like 4 different people before it really revealed the first person, or excuse me, the real person. But it's a must read. The third book that I recommend is The Whisper Man. Creepy, gripping, and at one point it made me want to hug my kids to no end. Here's the blurb. After the sudden death of his wife, Tom Kennedy believes a fresh start will help him and his young son Jake heal. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's another spooktacular where they move to a new house and the house is haunted. No, the house is not haunted. A new beginning, a new house, a new town. Featherbank. But the town has a dark past. 20 years ago, a serial killer abducted and murdered 5 residents. Until Frank Carter was finally caught, he was nicknamed the Whisper Man, for he would lure his victims out by whispering at their windows at night. Just as Tom and Jake settle into their new home, a young boy vanishes. His disappearance bears an unnerving resemblance to Frank Carter's crimes, reigniting old rumors that he preyed with an accomplice. Now, detectives Amanda Beck and Pete Willis must find the boy before it's too late even if that means Pete has to revisit his great foe in prison, the Whisper Man. And then Jake begins acting strangely. He hears a whispering at his window. Ooh. Those last two are must read. I just can't say it enough. So, now what we're going to do is the end of my video. I am going to read a tidbit from my own novel. Hope you like it. My own novel, Strange Glow Collective, Book 1, The Moon. Book 2, Part 1 and Part 2 are behind me as well, but I'll save those for another video. So, the blurb for mine. Tragedy strikes. The boy next door must now live with Sarah. Even so, they grow up to be close friends. When Sarah finds a glowing rose in the woods, she takes it home. The rose is found. Now Peter and Sarah are sent on a run with only one instruction: run past the new moon. On their journey, they must face obstacles unlike any other. Losses, gains, and strange surprises await. Will they survive and go home? Or will they find something more hidden in the attack? So what I'm going to do now is read the prologue. Yes, I know a lot of people don't like prologues, but this one has a prologue, and the very last book that I'm still working on will have an epilogue. So, without the prologue, this book would not make sense. Age 7. Shrill screams and crashing come from the cottage across the field and tall grasses. Sarah's father adjusts his bow and puts a hand on her shoulder, darting his eyes between her and her mother, voice tense. Stay inside, lock the doors, and close the windows. He looks at Sarah. Don't make a sound, sweet girl. I will be back soon, I promise. With that, he leaves through the back door in the kitchen. Sarah runs to the door, grabbing the handle. She tries peeking through the cracks, but the door creaks. Her mother pushes it shut, just missing her nose, and locks it quick. Her mother whispers, pulling at Sarah's hand, "Come to the family room with me. Play with your dolls." She rubs Sarah's hand with her thumb. Sarah shakes her head, pulling her hand away. Her mother sighs, staying right behind her. With the door locked, she tries looking through its window. Not tall enough, she pulls up on the windowsill, standing on her tiptoes, and throws the light yellow curtain over her head. Her heart races. The house so far away could be small enough for a mouse. Its windows filled with candlelight give it a lantern-like appearance. Shadows fleet past the windows. More shrill screams. Sarah jumps, her heart seeming to skip a beat. Her father runs across the fields. He leaps over the spiked wire fence into the tall grasses. The grasses sway in the wind. Another crash fills the night silence. She loses his movements. Her heart rate speeds faster than ever. More shadows cutting through the candlelight. Her father emerges from the grasses. Sarah's heart pounds in her ears as 3 big figures run from the back of the house as her father bursts through the cottage front door. The wind tries to whistle through the wind tries to whistle through the door next to her. As she watches on, she tries to match it, only to fog up the window. When she wipes off the glass, she watches her father emerge from the back of the cottage, pulling 3 quick times on his bow. Her heart seems to skip a beat as the 3 figures fall one by one to the ground. They don't move as her father re-enters the cottage for just a moment before coming out the front door, holding a small lump in his arms. As her father gets closer to the cottage, Sarah lets the curtain drop, stepping backwards into her mother. Her mother sets her hands on Sarah's shoulders before stepping up to the door and unlocking it. Sarah's father walks through the kitchen door, bloody and holding a small boy. The boy is silent, clings to her father's tunic. Sarah's mother steps up to them with a rag and tries to clean the blood and dirt from the boy's hands. The boy flinches at first, but reaches for her after a moment. Sarah's mother carries him back to the washroom. Sarah and her father stay in the kitchen in silence while she gives the boy a bath. Sarah's father washes his hands as best he can at the counter. Many moments later, they all sit down for a late, cold supper. The boy, still silent, stuffs his face with a chunk of bread. Sarah's father brings a fork full of roast to his mouth, stopping as he sees the boy overeating on bread, speaking clearly and hearty. Now, don't choke yourself there, son. His face drops as he realizes his word choice, and he lowers his fork, sitting a bit straighter. The boy stops chewing and stares at Sarah's father. Sarah's father clears his throat and looks between the table and the boy. A heavy awkwardness hangs over the table. No one makes a sound for a few seconds. Sarah's mother shoots her head up at Sarah's father, speaking in a thick, not so scrappy accent, with her words flowing into one another like graceful drops of syrup through bread. Look, I don't think it'd be best to call him son. Excuse my accents. The southern accent doesn't really draw much to the imagination. She sets her hand on Luke's arm, patting it, and smiles. Luke clears his throat, lowering and softening his tone. Yes, well, don't eat too much at once. We don't want you choking. He continues to eat his roast, not looking at the boy or saying another word. Sarah sits there silent, stealing glances at the boy. Short, wavy caramel hair surrounds a face riddled with freckles. His eyes dart towards her, dark blue encircling bright crystal. They linger on her for a second before staring back at this plate. They all eat in a looming silence, save the clanking and scraping of forks on plates, and the familiar squishing and soft smacking of chewing. An hour later, they finish eating, and Sarah's mother leads the boy to Sarah's room. He follows in silence, clinging to her mother's hand the whole way. Sarah watches until her closed bedroom door blocks her view. Not 5 minutes later, her mother emerges from the room and motions for Sarah to meet her at the beginning of the hallway. Putting her honey-tan hands on Sarah's shoulder, she whispers to her, Tabiba, he is going to share a room tonight. Make sure he is comfortable. Her thick black hair falls over her shoulders, hanging in front of her green eyes as they dart back and forth between Sarah's. Sarah nods, matching curls escaping her own braid as they shake all over. Yes, Umula. I'll make him a spot on the floor. Sarah turns towards her room, but her mother grabs her by her wrist, sliding down to her fingers. And Sarah stops, looking over her shoulder. Her thick braid slings to her chest, and she looks up at her mother, arching an eyebrow. Sarah's mother shakes her head, loose curls swinging about. No, Sarah, he will share your bed until you can get him into home. She raises her eyebrows, looking down at Sarah, and tilts her head to the right. Sarah's bright green eyes widen, tugging her hand away. Mula, no! She lowers her voice to forceful whispers. I don't even know his name. I don't want to share a bed with him. She looks back at her bedroom door, then back at her mother. He could have head bugs, or worse. He could be a bedwetter. She stomps her foot, huffing, and looks at the floor, shaking her head. No, I won't. Sarah's mother's grip tightens enough that Sarah returns eye contact. Sarah, you will do as I say. Now go get ready for bed. She points to Sarah's room, the bangles on her wrist clanging, and taps her foot while staring at the bedroom door. Sarah looks at the floor, muttering her words. Yes, Umula. With slumped shoulders, she walks to her room to wash up. The boy is already in her bed. He lies there in one of Sarah's nightgowns, and on her side, no less. She huffs, walking over to the corner of the room to her water basin, and washes her face. She picks up her hog bristle toothbrush, putting in on some white paste from the small bowl next to the water pitcher, and proceeds to brush her teeth. Wiping off, she overhears her parents talking in the family room. She walks to her door, looking down the hallway as best she can through the crack, and listens. Gloria stands there near the fireplace, wringing her hands. Luke sits in the worn armchair across from her, running his fingers through his short blonde curls, and looks at the floor. It was awful, Gloria. I haven't seen such unnecessary bloodshed since I served. The house was a mess, and their bodies were just... He chokes a bit, putting his hands to his mouth, and takes in a deep breath. They were just left there on the floor, covered in blood. Sighing, he closes his eyes and rests his shaking head in his hands. I wasn't there in time to save them. I ran as fast as I could. He points towards Sarah's room, not looking up. I found him under the floor, crying. He had to have heard and seen everything. He sighs hard, leaning back in his chair, and looks up at Gloria. When I brought him out, I tried to shield him, but he forced himself from me and looked He looked at them. He shakes his head, staring off at the void between him and the floor, and curls his fingernails into the rough upholstery, making it creak. I told him to close his eyes, but he refused. He sighs again as he leans forward and puts his head in his hands. Gloria walks behind him, sliding her arms around his shoulders. Zelia, it will be all right. You did what you were supposed to do. You saved the boy. Not only that, but you stopped those men from coming over here. She kisses the back of his head, talking into his hair. That is all that matters now. She lays her head on his shoulder, squeezing. I just hope the Ibis will be Yahweh with us. She rubs his arms, squeezing them, and slides her hands up to his chest. Luke looks over his shoulder at her. I'm sure he will. He pauses. One day, he will be content. He puts a hand on Gloria's, rubbing it, and gets up. Sarah moves away from her door, hoping they didn't see her. Her stomach knots up. A lump forms in her throat. It's not fair that she's whining over losing a bed and a nightgown when he just lost his parents. What if she lost her parents? What would she do? Would there be people like her mother and father to take her in? Looking at the boy, she puts her towel down and slips into bed. Rolling over towards him, she whispers, My name is Sarah. I'm sorry about what happened to you. I hope we can be friends one day. She rolls her back to his, closing her eyes, and drifts to sleep. The next morning, Sarah sweeps the floor. She sweeps the floor in the kitchen. She watches her father through the open kitchen door as he goes over to the boy's house with a wheelbarrow. After about an hour's worth of digging, he buries the boy's parents in their backyard, putting an inner circle and an outer circle at the tops of each grave. Sarah stands next to the door, out of sight, and continues to watch. A tear rolls down her cheek. She sniffles, wiping it, and swallows back a small lump. Her father piles the men onto the wheelbarrow, pushing them towards the corner of the plot of land. Leaning the barrow forward, the men slide into what can only be a deep hole. Sarah watches her father strike flint close enough to the edge of the hole. What is he doing? She squints, focusing on every strike. A light line of smoke rises from the dead grasses. Wet grass shouldn't burn. She watches even closer. He digs in his pants pockets, pulling out a handful of dry, dead grass and lays it over the smoke. The line thickens and a flame flares. Oh, that makes more sense. A noise catches Sarah's attention, and she looks around the corner of the counter, but nothing's there. Sighing, she turns around just as her father walks away from the flames, leaving the men to burn. It's odd. No one else knows they're there. Why would he need to burn them? She shrugs, looking at the boy's cottage as her father makes his way into it with the wheelbarrow. It's small, only one floor made of logs with a thatched roof. Just before the deep hole is a barn just big enough for one horse, a few pigs, some chickens, and 3 cows. It makes Sarah's home seem lavish. Standing in the back of her family's farm is a medium barn allowing for 4 horses, 10 pigs, 6 goats, 20 chickens, and 15 cows. They have a floor and a half cottage, with the upstairs being all storage and a basement for food pot storage. Her parents take pride in their small lot of vegetables between the cottage and the barn. No one takes more pride in the appearance of their own plot of land more than her father. Her father emerges from the cottage with a barrow full of items. She watches him go into the barn with it. Her mother walks into the kitchen, and Sarah starts sweeping again. Glancing over her shoulder, she looks through the door and watches her father lead some of the animals over to their barn with the barrow attached to the horse. Once he has finished moving everything, he begins his chores. Sarah returns to her sweeping, giving it her full attention until her mother leaves the kitchen. The boy sits in the corner quiet. He looks at Sarah's dolls. Sarah watches him, now acting as if she is still sweeping, even though she's finished minutes ago. He sets the dolls on the floor, face down in the corner. Sarah keeps watching. He just stares at them. He stays like this for several minutes. Sarah walks over to him and picks them up. You don't put them on the floor, silly. Look. She holds up the girl doll and fixes her dress, then picks up the boy doll and makes them hold hands and dance. See, that's how you play with dolls. She holds them back out to the boy. The boy just stares at her. Before she can react, he snatches the dolls from her hands and throws them across the room. Crossing his arms, he shrinks into himself into the corner. Sarah looks at him, eyebrows furrowed, and then stomps over to pick them up. She hugs the dolls to her chest, looking back at him, and grits her teeth. He begins to whimper. Gloria walks in from the kitchen door, stopping and watches them. Sarah loosens her jaw, biting her lips, and holds a doll in each hand. Sighing, she walks over to him. Sarah sits on her knees in front of him and holds the dolls. They remind you of your parents, don't they? It's okay. You can talk to me. She walks on her knees towards him, hands outstretched. The boy looks at her, eyes filling with tears. He nods. Before Sarah can move, he throws himself at her. He hugs her, moving his head into her lap, and sobs. She strokes his head like her mother always does when she's sad. The boy grabs at her skirts, clinging to the fabric. He cries into the crease of her lap. Sarah's fingers glide through his curls over and over. She sings a lullaby her father sings to her when she gets sad or ill. Taking in a deep breath, she looks down at him. The songbird sings to the skies, the sea sings to the shore. Her singing turns to humming as she brushes his hair away from his face and looks down at him. What's your name? The boy looks up at her. They lock eyes. He is quiet for a long moment, staring up at her, and then looks at the floor. He sniffles, wiping his nose with his hand, but she doesn't know if the fabric he had over it was his sleeve or her dress. The boy sighs, sniffling again. Peter. Sarah smiles at him, lifting his head and holds him by his shoulders. How old are you, Peter? She wipes his tears from his cheeks with her thumbs, still smiling at him. Peter looks her in the eyes, wiping his nose on his hand, and sniffs again. 7. He wipes his nose one more time with the back of his hand and sits back. How old are you? He pulls at his dirty sleeves. Sarah puts her left hand to her chest, sitting with her legs to her right. I am 7 too. She giggles, and their faces light up. Oh, she puts a finger in the air, letting a smile creep its way across her face. Peter, do you know how to read? Peter shakes his head. I've never learned. We didn't have books. Sarah's smile falters for a second, but then returns. Wait here. She gets up. Gloria moves out of the way just in time. Sarah runs through the doorway, holding the door frame, and slingshots herself into the family room. Minutes later, she returns hugging a small red rectangle. Gloria moves back to the door frame, watching in silence. Sarah kneels next to Peter, smile remaining. Now, you can learn. She holds out the small leather-bound book to him. Peter takes it, opening to the title page, and then looks up at her. What is it? Sarah giggles. It's my favorite Toluco tale. It's about a red-headed princess who is held captive by an evil king, but is saved by a dragon who turns into a prince at the end. They smile at each other. Peter, will you be my friend? She pauses, looking at the book. I'll teach you to read, if you like. Peter sniffles, grinning, and nods. I'd like that. He picks up the dolls, handing them to her, and holds the book to his chest. Gloria enters the kitchen completely now, walking to the wash basin. She wipes a tear from her cheek before acting as if she's cleaning the counters. So that's the prologue. I know it was long, and I'm sorry I stumbled over a few sentences and that my accents don't sound all that great, but I hope that it is intriguing enough for you to at least glimpse the novel on Amazon. It is available in paperback for $12 and available on Kindle for $4.99. I'm pretty sure it's up on Kindle Unlimited, which means you get it for free if you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited. If you enjoyed this video at all, please like it and please subscribe, because I will be uploading another video, I think next week. Yeah, sometime next week. So hit the like button, share it, tell your friends about it. Oh, another thing, if you comment with your email address. I will randomly select 3 people to receive a free version of my novel. All you have to do is comment your email and I will email you with the details, and it is up to you whether or not you want to participate once I have contacted you, and I will you will know who you are once I email you. So thank you for watching and thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.